Hello, come on then. This is who I have to deal with. Hello everyone, welcome to my review of the first episode of Doctor Who Series 11, The Woman Who Fell to Earth. I'm sorry it hasn't come earlier, but I've just had the busiest week, and I've kind of got this whole reviewing thing against me anyway, because I don't get to watch any of these episodes live, because I'm working whenever they're on, so it's just really frustrating. So I end up watching them like midnight on a Monday. It's just mental. But the review is here, and now it's time to give my thoughts. So I'll get the obvious one out of the way. What do I think of the new Doctor, the 13th Doctor, Jodie Whittaker? And what I think is, I do want to see more. I like what I see. I think she's charismatic, she made me laugh. I just think she's dynamic and fun. I think fun is a good word. I almost find it a disservice to liken her to David Tennant and Matt Smith, because I've seen a lot of people do that, and that's fine. But I got elements of David Tennant, Matt Smith. You know, the odd scrunched up face would be quite David Tennant, and there were lines like when she said to my God, I've forgotten her name. Yaz! When she said to Yaz's character in the police car, "Can we turn the sirens on?" Very Matt Smith-like. But I'm sensing something very different in her portrayal. I can't quite pinpoint it, but it was moments like when she says to Yaz, "Oh, I'm calling you Yaz because we're best friends now." I liked those moments, and it felt like you were sort of dealing with a fun older sister, or, you know, quite a best mate kind of vibe, which I really like. And I don't necessarily think David Tennant nor Matt Smith had that vibe. I think Matt Smith had quite a warmth towards his companions, and Amy Pond and Rory and things, which was quite platonic but loving and caring. But this seems different, and I'm intrigued to see what happens going forward. I hope she's given more heavy and darker material going forward. Not all the time, of course, but I feel like that side to her Doctor hasn't yet been seen. There were moments of it, so I just want to see that explored a bit, and I imagine whenever the 13th Doctor comes across the Daleks, that would be a really good point for that to happen. So I'm intrigued, I'm excited, I'm on board, so that's really good. And I think that kind of comes from a lot of people, I think, are still sort of going, "Oh, I'm still quite used to Peter Capaldi and everything." And I kind of don't have that, because I wasn't much of a fan of Peter Capaldi as the Doctor. I think lovely man, but I was not a fan of that Doctor, so I don't have that attachment. So I think I found it easier to jump on board with Jodie's Doctor, but I'm still kind of waiting patiently for the next few episodes for her Doctor to be more clearly defined, because ultimately this episode was more about the companions. It even opened with one of them, Ryan, by Tosin Cole, and I really liked him. I thought he was great. The first time I watched this episode, I've watched this episode about 3 times, the first time I watched it, wasn't ridiculously keen on his accent. The second and third time I watched it, I kind of ignored that part of his performance and just focused on his acting ability and his overall character, and I enjoyed his performance a lot more. It's a very natural, very quite quiet and reserved performance, but there's a lot of lightness and humour in it, which I quite like. And I kind of just switch my brain off in the same way you watch Nicola Bryant as Perry and just sort of go, yeah, it's a bad American accent, but let's look for the diamond in the rough, as it were. I really find the decision to give him dyspraxia very interesting, and I think it's a very good move by Chibnall, because it's very different. No other companion or assistant to the Doctor has ever had a disorder or a condition or anything like that, and I think it's a really good way of grounding a character and making you relate to them. I mean, I personally don't know anyone who has dyspraxia, nor do I have dyspraxia, but it's a very easy way for you to just feel for that character, and I like the fact that at the end of the episode, when he picks up the bike again and he can't ride a bike and everything, and he's trying again for his nan. I'm so glad that he didn't then learn how to ride a bike, because I think that would have been a bit contrived, a bit cheesy. It would have been, oh, the grief, he channeled that grief into determination and could ride a bike. I'm glad that it's an ongoing thing, and we'll see whether this challenges him throughout the stories that he's in, and whether he gets better. I don't know. It's an interesting character decision, and I'm glad Chris Chibnall has done that. The next character that we saw in the episode was Yasmin, who didn't get a lot of screen time, and evidently I don't remember her very much because I forgot her name earlier. She's a police officer. She's mainly dealing with parking disputes. She doesn't feel like she's being challenged enough, and then all of a sudden she's whisked into this big Doctor Who adventure, and that's kind of about it. That's all we kind of know about Yaz. She just wants to be challenged, and here a challenge is presented. I think Mandip Gill is a great actress, actually. I think performance-wise she was top form. I just hope that we get more insight into her character going forward, because we didn't get much. So we were also introduced to Graham, played by Bradley Walsh, and Grace, his wife, played by Sharon D. Clarke, and I really like these characters. I was not expecting to like Bradley Walsh so much as I did, but he was funny throughout. He does have that Wilf, Bernard Cribbins vibe, which I was expecting, and he got me very emotional near the end. I wasn't expecting that at all. Get on, Bradders. Sharon D. Clarke as Grace, fantastic. I thought she was great. A lot of people saw it coming that she would unfortunately die at the end. I wasn't predicting that at all, and I should have seen it coming, because it's just staple Doctor Who. If there's someone there who's just feels like a great fit for a companion, but isn't the companion, you're gonna cack it. There was a lot of just interesting choices. So we've got Grace dying and dead, Graham in remission after he's had cancer, Ryan's lost a nan, and now all of a sudden they're whisked on this adventure with the Doctor, and they're stuck with the Doctor by the end of the episode. It's all very interesting at this moment, and I don't really know where it's going to go. It very much felt like a setup episode, this episode. I mean, of course it was. It's establishing a new Doctor, 3 new companions, and a whole new series of Doctor Who. It's going to be a setup, but it kind of leaves you just wanting the second episode and the 8 more episodes after that. So those were the characters. I all enjoyed that. Oh, you're going to settle? So those were the characters. What did I think of the overall story? And the story was overly quite simplistic, I thought, but I think that was necessary in the same way that 11th Hour was very simplistic and was more about just establishing this new Doctor and the new characters. Essentially, the story was you had this alien called Zim Shah, who they jokingly referred to as Tim Shaw, who was this kind of predator-like alien, a hunter, who was tasked of, a random human is selected on this planet, he has to go kill him to prove that he's a badass Stanza warrior. I think they were called the Stanza, their species. But he's a bit of a cheat. He has a metal coil thing that collects data, and so this metal coil data was collecting data about the target. It was Carl, that was his name. The plot is kind of drip-fed to you, so it starts off with Ryan finding the pod after accidentally giving consent for it to appear. That way he kind of meets Yaz, who's the police officer. Meanwhile, Graham and Grace are on the train, and the metal coil comes and it stops the train and everything, and that's where the Doctor falls out of her TARDIS from the end of Twice Upon a Time, ends up in the train, and they kind of meet, and then Yaz and Ryan then come to that scene. You've got this side plot with Raoul, who's this character who the hunter, Tim Shah, beforehand had killed his sister, so he's stolen the pod to try and get back his sister. He ends up cacking it when Tim Shah comes out of the pod, and it's really just the Doctor battling the fact that she's just regenerated and everything, trying to get to the bottom of what the hell's going on, and having these poor souls, Graham, Ryan and Yaz, for the ride. I really liked the threat, the Tim Shah. I thought he looked great. It was grotesque, just all the teeth on his face. He takes the teeth of all of his victims and puts them on his face. It was grim. And the metal coil as well, in the train. Pretty scary stuff. And my mum really liked it, along with my brother, and they were like, oh, flipping out, this is going to scare some kids. And I thought, yeah. And that was one of the biggest surprises, actually. Going into this series, I thought it was going to be a lot more kid-friendly, I guess, a lot more light-hearted. And this was actually quite a dark episode. It was set mostly at night. And yeah, it was pretty spooky. I imagine the future episodes won't all be like this, but it was dark, it was kind of spooky. There was a body count. So you had Raoul dying, you had Chav who throws salad at the villain and gets killed, you've got the crane operator who's talking to his granddaughter and then cacks it, you know, and you get Grace at the end who dies. Pretty brutal, really. But it was a cool, fun monster of the week, I thought. I now have to kind of make mention of the music and also just how the show looks. I think the show looks amazing, and I could tell from the trailers that it was going to look a lot better than it has in recent years. Even though in recent years the show has looked quite good, I think it's benefited from this update. The aspect ratio's different, everything feels wider, it feels like there's more in the shot. And some of those first few shots at the beginning with Ryan riding his bike and just on that hilltop, it just looked stunning. The music by Segun Akinola is very different to Murray Gold, isn't it? It's very, very different. And it's not as bombastic and loud and grand. It's like, oh, I am the Doctor, and oh, this is the threat, roar, and then for any comedy moments or anything. It was a lot more subdued and in the background, and I think it's the right way to go. But there's still some good tracks, I think. I think the track that plays over the Doctor building the sonic screwdriver, which was one of my favourite parts of the episode, was very good. There was a good track while they were climbing up the crane. I thought that was a good one, and that's one that I remembered quite prominently. When the Doctor at the end after the funeral, is talking about her family and everything, I've just noticed I just want to say his all the time. It's still such a weird thing calling Doctor a she. It's so weird. But when she's talking about her family and everything, there's a good track there, which is actually quite reminiscent of Murray Gold, with the high female vocals in the background there. But I'm impressed with what I've heard, and the theme song at the end that we got. We didn't get the title sequence, but we got the theme at the end. And it's very, very classic Who. It's pretty much the original track by Delia Derbyshire, just with stuff over it, it feels. It feels like it's just an old fence that's been repainted almost. It's the old theme, mostly kind of sampled in parts, but it's got a heavy percussion that's quite at the forefront. And it was weird. It was weird hearing it the first time, because I wasn't expecting it to be as classic as it was. But I think overall I like it now. I mean, it's much better than that Peter Capaldi theme. My God, that was awful. It was like just these horrible screeching cats. Sorry, cat. It was just this, gross. It was horrible. So anything is an improvement of that. Yeah, it was a weird one. I've got used to it now, this new theme, because I think I was expecting something a bit more grand and bombastic, but maybe that's because I'm used to Murray Gold's arrangements. So interesting stuff. It really is. The new music, the new soundtrack. We don't have a TARDIS in this episode, which was quite surprising actually. We got a new Sonic, which, it's growing on me, the new Sonic is growing on me. I did enjoy the whole scene of that, as I said, when she's creating it and everything. But the TARDIS not being in the first episode was a surprise, and I imagine we're going to see it in the next episode. I'll be very shocked if it takes longer than that, because the companions have to travel back and forth, and how else are they going to do it? I know it's been done before, like in season 12, but I imagine the TARDIS will be in the next episode. It raises the debate as to whether the TARDIS is in the title sequence, because of course we didn't get the title sequence in this first episode. Is it in the title sequence? Because if the TARDIS rescues them from the end of this episode when they're stranded in space, is the TARDIS going to rescue them and then it's going to go into the title sequence? Who knows? A part of me thinks it's not going to be in the title sequence. From what I've heard from reviews of the second episode and just from the credits of this episode, it looks very Pertwee-esque. The first Jon Pertwee title sequence, which I don't think had a TARDIS. I don't think it did, no. So we could be going really back to basics here. I hope we see a face. I hope we see a Jodie face just going in the camera. Not like that. But that would be if I was the Doctor, just like that. That would be my face. It'd be brilliant. So that's kind of my thoughts on the first episode of Series 11. I'm sorry it's a bit jumbled and all over the place, but I think that's kind of my overall feeling. I am a bit jumbled and all over the place in terms of what I think about it, because I think the rest of the series will kind of define what I think of this episode, because this episode is just laying the groundwork, going, okay, this is what we've got, this is the kind of vibe we're going for, let's go. And I'm very excited to see what happens next. I'm going to give this episode a 7.5, I think, because the pacing was an interesting one. It was a lot slower in places, but I think it also dipped. So when we had the subplot with Raoul and everything, I think it kind of grinds to a halt after a little while. I think that could have been done differently. It felt like it was just a way of the Doctor and the companions getting to the workshop so that the Sonic could be made. You know, it felt kind of a bit... yeah, you know, it felt a bit contrived, and it would just grind the story to a halt sometimes. The characters aren't quite defined yet. People like Yaz and things, stuff like that, I think just sort of knock the episode down just a little bit. But I like what I see so far, and I have a lot of faith in Chris Chibnall. See you for the Ghost Monument.